Good morning, dear student. Good morning, dear candidate. Today we are focusing on the Cameroon GCE Advanced Level History by Sir Moses, and we're focusing on War History Section C, that is Revolution and Diplomacy from 1700 to 1919. And the first topic of this section C is the Glorious Revolution of 1688. That's our main focus today. Now we are going to start with the introduction, definition of the Glorious Revolution. First of all, a revolution is a sudden change in an economic or political system which is often carried out through violence. But with the case of the Glorious Revolution, it was different, as it was the peaceful or bloodless transformation of the English system of government from an absolute monarchy to a constitutional monarchy, where the people control the king through parliament. It could also be referred to as the peaceful change of dynastic from the Stuart, who were the Stuart were Catholic kings, to the Orange Protestant kings, and also a change in the center of power from the king to parliament in England. In this way, absolutism gradually gave way to a constitutional parliamentary supremacy, and Catholic domination became a matter of the past. This revolution that began in 1688 led to the overthrow of James II, thereby giving way to the accession of William and Mary as King and Queen of England respectively. This is a brief introduction to the Glorious Revolution. Please, if you are following this video, I will ask you please to like and subscribe to not miss the next part of this video, which is very, very interesting. We are moving to the causes of the revolution. As we know, the Glorious Revolution was caused by a combination of political, social, economic, and religious factors. But the focus of our work today, of this video today, will only focus on the political causes of the Glorious Revolution. The first political causes of the Glorious Revolution is the autocratic and dictatorial rules of James II. James was tyrannical, arbitrary, and autocratic. He believed in the divine right of kings, which held that the king was God's representative on earth, and his authority could not be challenged by an ordinary person, for he was accountable to none but God. As such, James too became unsympathetic, revengeful, and capricious, and believed that any opposition to his reign was tantamount to rebellion. Hence, the people hated such. The second political factor was the brutal suppression of the Mormon rebellion. After the death of Charles II, who was a brother of James II, the English believed that he would be succeeded by his illegitimate birth Protestant son called the Duke of Monmouth. Unfortunately, Charles II was succeeded by James, the Duke of York, who then became James II, and when Charles Monmouth organized a rebellion to overthrow him, James II brutally suppressed it with ruthless impunity that ended with Charles Monmouth beheaded at Tower Hill in July 1685. This created more friction between James II and the English, especially the Protestants. Another causes of the Glorious Revolution in the political domain is the creation of a standing army in times of peace. In 1686, James II set up a standing army of about 30,000 soldiers under the pretext that such an army was needed to ensure against internal and external attacks. The English, from sad experience, hated a standing army in peacetime, for it reminded them of the cruel rule of Oliver Cromwell, who ruled England from 1649 to 1658. More to that, the army entailed the waste of economic resources, and James used it to suppress any rebellion against him. Worst of all, many of his soldiers were Roman Catholic, and he provided them with chapel tents and even went further to increase taxes in order to raise enough money to pay the army. Consequently, the creation of the standing army was more considered as a return of tyranny, and as such, the revolution became indispensable. Another cause is dispensing and suspending power. James II believed in the divine right of king, which made him not to share powers with Parliament. He used dispensing powers to reinforce his one-man rule so as to enable him to dispense the act passed by the Parliament. His main aim was to bypass the Test Act of 1673 and to give Catholic strategic position in his administration. In 1687, for example, he dissolved Parliament and filled it up with Catholics and those who left the Anglican Church and joined the Catholic Church. James therefore annoyed Parliament and the English Anglican, as he was virtually declaring crown supremacy over the Parliament. Another political cause was frequent and vindictive cabinet reshuffle. James II often dismissed competent and efficient ministers who opposed his policy and replaced them with his favorites. For example, he dismissed Halifax, an Anglican, as Lord President and replaced him with Sunderland, his friend. Such favoritism was hated by the English, especially the Anglican. You have the unpopular policy or the unpopular foreign policy of James II. His foreign policy was oriented towards Catholic France under the reign of his cousin Louis XIV. This was highly resented by a cross-section of the English people, especially the Anglican. This resentment came as a result of the revivals they had over the control of North America and Asia, and because England products were excluded from French market. Even so, England was largely a Protestant state, while France was dominated by Catholics. As such, this good relationship by James II was considered another designed to destroy Anglicanism and introduce Catholicism. Also, in 1686, when an anti-French coalition known as the League of Habsburg, made up of Spain, the Roman Empire, and Holland, was formed to fight against French aggression, the British had expected James II to join the League, but he gave a deaf ear since it was forwarded against his cousin Louis XIV. This helped to worsen the relationship between the king and his subject. These were political causes of the Glorious Revolution, or the political factors or reasons or motives that pushed the English people to revolt against James II. This was provided to you by Sir Moses. Now, please, dear student, dear candidate, do not forget to like and subscribe to have the next part of this wonderful piece of work, which will fall under what? The socio-economic and religious factors of the Glorious Revolution, which we are about to examine in our next video. Thank you and God bless you, people.